Good morning, this is Romey Swanson. I'm here filling in for Michael Behrens, who couldn't be with us today. It's December 18th, 2020. We're at Nalle Bunny Run, overlooking Lake Austin. We're gonna take a walk around, see what sort of critters, wildlife habitat we can find, share with you, and hopefully we all learn something together. I'm listening to these goldfinches. They'll do this kind of like plaintive mew call. It. I'm kind of sad. Oh, I'm sad. But that's the cardinal, and then up here is the bunch of house finches. But y'all know those really red things. They look like dipped in strawberry jams. Pull it out. But here we go. We got one of these house finches kind of doing what I was describing earlier, where they get up there and they're just looking at the sun, taking it all in, flying away as soon as I pull my camera up, like a typical bird. So we got a Chinese Palo tree above us, and this is an invasive exotic species. Just like the name implies, it's not from here. It was brought to Texas, brought to the U.S. cultivated, planted, and it's an aggressive spreader. So the reason that it's an exotic invasive is that it comes in and starts invading habitat and taking over, just as you can see here with all of these younger trees that have probably come from this parent. But it also can serve to be habitat. I mean, if these trees weren't here, are we guaranteed to have native trees taking their place? Uncertain. And there is some forage value. Some of the bugs and other critters that may occur in there. I don't know if animals eat these tallow seeds, but the tallow seeds do have a purpose. These were once used to make candles. Each one of those seeds has a little thin film of wax around it that folks at one point could use to make candles. So you can see these tallow seeds, these white seeds that kind of very noticeable in the fall when the tree loses its leaves and all that's left are these white seed pods, are covered in a thin film of tallow or wax. And you can see my thumbnail here is just kind of like removing some of it. It's like a waxy film, and that's where it gets its name. Black crested titmouse busting over here.
Which one is this one right here?
Up there is a northern mockingbird, our state bird, Texas state bird. So are you recording?
Uh-huh.
Tell a quick story about mockingbird. So mockingbird is, of course, the Texas state bird. It's an iconic bird, but it's a state bird that's shared. There's several other states that'll have this bird. But the interesting thing is that there's a lot of history to this species. It was considered to be one of the most poetically influencing species when the United States was being sort of settled. And because of its song, there was a lot of comparisons to the nightingale back in Europe, which lots of poetry was written about it. So this bird and the hermit thrush inspired a lot of early American poetry, and it's noteworthy for that reason. Now we look at it and we think, oh gosh, it's always kind of mimicking other birds' songs and sounds that you hear. Even in the built environment like this, you'll sometimes hear them mimicking like a car alarm or something. But at some point they had a really elegant song, probably still do, and our ears are the ones that changed. We're no longer really inspired by them. I was hoping that maybe we could turn one of these bluebirds, which are our standard bluebird is the eastern bluebird, but we're currently in Texas experiencing this crazy eruptive event where a lot of montane, like Rocky Mountain species and Mexican species are sort of converging into Texas, into haunts they don't traditionally overwinter in, and pushing the limits of their normal range. So we're seeing a lot of species that we wouldn't normally see during this year due to this eruptive event. Point being is there's a western species of bluebird. It'd be really cool to find it and then tell, hey, Michael, you missed it, you got it. But, and then also mountain bluebirds. There's another species of bluebird. Mountain bluebirds are the one you want to see. Metallic blue all over, gorgeous. These guys are pretty. I mean, don't get me wrong, but that mountain bluebird, there isn't a whole lot of birds out there that can outblue that bluebird. In this case, this is a canid track, so dog-ish family. I would say that this is a gray fox, just like we were talking about a little bit earlier. You can see here's the paw, the pad, and then 4 toes, 2, 3, 4, kind of oval and long shaped, and they're kind of tall, squashed on the sides. I'm a little out of practice, so I couldn't tell you which foot this belongs to, other than it's on the left side, and then here's the right side. And I think that because this one's a little bit fatter and bigger, that probably means that it's the front. And this would be the corresponding back, left, possibly. I could be completely butchering it. So I pulled this twig or branch off of a Yopon holly tree, and I kind of noted that it really has this festive Christmas type of color to it with the red and the green. This particular plant with the berries on it is the female, and each individual is either male or female. The one behind us, possibly a male. It doesn't have any berries on it, but it provides important genetic material that has to be cross-pollinated, yada yada, to produce these berries. And that's why you don't see all of these Yopon with bright red berries all over them. This is a tree that has a scientific name that's pretty interesting. It's Ilex Vomitoria, and the idea was that the Native Americans early on would use the leaves to create a tea, and they would drink copious amounts of this tea steeped with these leaves, dried out, to the point where they would vomit, and they would purge, and it would allow them to invoke kind of like a vision quest where they would see whatever it is that they saw. I'm not 100% sure that the translation of the name was accurate. It may have actually meant to describe another tree, but I do know that people today will remove these leaves, dry them out, and then make tea out of them and not vomit.
The tea's caffeinated, right? It was
of
caffeine.
Yeah, it is a caffeinated tea, and maybe that's why they were vomiting. Maybe they just had too much caffeine. Got a little buzz. Isn't that cool? That's really beautiful. I might take that home, show Aaron. And one of the things that the reason it's called gum mammalia is, again, we're talking about decades and maybe a century ago. Children would come and injure the tree, ball up some sap, and they could chew it like gum. I don't do that, but the leaves look a heck of a lot like live oak leaves, and it can often be confused, but the bark is really kind of distinct. And again, when I say the word distinct, it's all relative, right? Because looking through my eyes as a person that's looked at a lot of trees, it's distinct to me, but a person that's coming out here for the first time to look at trees might say it looks like every other tree they've ever seen. This bark looks the same. Carolyn has pointed out what's really interesting is this dappled pattern of little circles kind of in lines. And what's occurred here is just like those children that like to chew gum decades and centuries ago, there's a bird called a sapsucker, and in our area it's the yellow black-bellied sapsucker that comes and pecks these little holes in here, and these become little wells, much like up north when they do the maples to create maple syrup. It'll come back in here and check these little injuries, and when the sap wells up in there, it'll come and just lick it out. A little snack, a little nutrition, a few calories, and then off it goes. So this is a really distinct sign that anybody could recognize as linear lines, rings around a tree of little circles created by the sapsucker. This long feather is a primary feather from the wing of a turkey vulture or black vulture. So it's a longer, all dark feather. You can tell that it's got a long trailing edge and a short leading edge. So this is a flight feather. So one of the ones in the wings. It's dropped it, and this is an area that you'll see vultures generally kind of roosting in the evenings or overnight. They like to come into this area, and I mean, it's obviously been here for a while, but where they like to roost, there's often a lot of whitewash on the rocks where they've, done their business. This grass that I'm holding here, the seed head has largely disappeared, but what you can see is that it has this real distinct inflorescence at the top where all the seeds would occur when it flowers out, or after it flowers out. This is called hooded windmill grass. I believe it's hooded windmill grass, but it's a type of windmill grass. And so as you can see, it looks like a windmill in the wind. And this particular species is probably here most to do with the well-drained sandy soil. It's just another really interesting kind of distinct plant that when you see it, you know it. It's an easy one to learn and remember. But okay, so this tall stalked plant here is called common mullet. It's actually an exotic. It's not native to the hill country, but it is here. It's here to stay. It's all over the place, and I don't know that it necessarily creates a lot of problems. A couple of the benefits is that you have a super duper soft leaf with a lot of fuzz and frizz on it. And imagine if you need to go visit a tree in the woods at some point, that this is probably, useful. And then it's my understanding, I don't know if I have the details 100% correct, but this is like a 2-year cycle plant. And so at first year, they just sort of grow their lower leaves out. It's a distinct leaf, very easy to recognize. And then the second year is the flowering year, the stalk year. And it grows this inflorescence in that second year of its life cycle. And that this stalk at one point was used by settlers who would take and maybe, take the tallow or something that we were talking about earlier and put some wax on this somehow and create a torch. I don't know if that's real or not, but that is what I've heard or read, and I believe it until somebody smarter than me tells me it's not true. This is a cool plant. So this is a Nakwa. It is a South Texas shrub or small tree, and it reaches its northern limits right here in the Colorado River Basin. You don't find it much further north than this, but this is a tree that you find commonly in like South Texas, brush country. It produces a nice little fruit, but what's real distinctive is like the leaves, although they're kind of shady, it's more of a matted type of reflection you're getting off of it. And Carolyn, feel this. Feel that. What does that feel like to you?
Oh, it's sticky.
It's like a cat's tongue.
Yeah. It is.
I mean, I just gotta call it what it is. Everybody's been licked by a cat, right? It feels like a cat's tongue.
Yeah, like sandpaper.
Like sandpaper. Maybe I should describe it that way. Weirdo. Like, yeah. But we have cats, and the cat sometimes licks my hand. I'm like, it feels like
It does.
feels like sandpaper going across your hand. Anyway, that's a cool tree. It's pretty
It
interesting
is.
that again, furthest north that you find it is like right here.
Wow.
2, 3. Woo! Look at that big old leopard frog. That's a honkin' mamma jamma. Bye. But that was a very exciting. I think that's going to be Michael's jealousy pill right there.
A woodcock?
A woodcock, American woodcock. We are going to walk over there again. It'll probably flush.
Okay.
And if we get close and we can see it before it pops up, we can get a photograph of it. It'll be a pretty decent one.
Sweet.
That is so cool. Did you all see it?
I saw it was like orangish red, right?
Yeah.
Like brown, orangey, earthy.
I'll, video too. See it. Things are do you hear the wing whirl?
Yeah.
Okay, that was right there. Wow. That's super cool. That's kind of like a marshy bird, and they like to roost in the daytime in the shrubby habitat, and then they'll launch off at night and they'll go forage and feed. And usually the only time you see them is when they're silhouetted against like a darkening sky as they're kind of launching off of their daytime roost, or in the morning on a lightning sky, and you can see them silhouetted across the top of the canopy coming into their roost. More of an eastern species, and they kind of hit their limit of range coming into Austin, although you certainly get plenty of them further west. It's just not as commonly observable, so that's a good bird to have. Whenever you come out the Nalle Bunny Run, you'll notice that there are certain contraptions here on the wildlands, and all of these are in support of a wildlife management plan, in support of the wildlife that we have out here. This particular contraption is called a rainwater catchment guzzler. So as rain falls, it hits the top of this roof, it runs to this gutter, and it collects into this cistern or this plastic barrel, which then gravity feeds this float valve dog pan over here, providing a water source, a supplemental water source to wildlife. And when I used to work at HCC and run camera trap surveys out here, we would see a lot of critters utilizing this source. And not just deer and foxes, but also small wildlife, lots of birds, small rodents, and other critters. So this is an important element. And we also have, and you'll note there's nesting boxes like this one right up here, labeled 13 on this snag, this dead tree. So we're providing supplemental sources of shelter for nesting songbirds. We've got water features. We have regular surveys and counts of critters. Michael's monthly bird walk, as an example, the camera traps that I used to run. And all of these are elements of a designed wildlife management plan that is incorporated here at the preserve in support of a property tax valuation called the Wildlife Management Valuation, an incentive in Texas for private landowners to manage for the benefit of wildlife while receiving the same property tax valuation as a traditional farm or ranch. And the land trust, Hill Country Conservancy, has, by all rights, the opportunity to take this property off of the books for property tax purposes, being a nonprofit charitable organization. But because they want to maintain a favorable relationship with the Travis County Appraisal District, they choose to be seen as a similar entity as a private landowner, to manage and follow the same rules, to be a good faith partner, and to not be seen as a liability another parcel of land out there that is getting by without paying its fair share. And so this is an important component not only for wildlife, but to provide a good example to the public of how we want to work within the rules and be a good partner and contribute to the economies, not only in the great benefits of ecotourism, open space, and the therapeutic property of being able to touch nature and be involved in it, but also to share back in support of the school districts and maintaining roads and everything else. So that's part of the best management practices many land trusts work under to be a good partner. So are you still living over there on Wadsworth?